The champagne glass slipped from Amara's trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor of her own living room as she stared at the scene before her. Her husband of 7 years, Kwame, had his hands tangled in another woman's hair, her own sister Isai's hair, their bodies pressed against the kitchen counter where Amara had prepared countless meals for their family. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. Kwame. The name tore from her throat like a battle cry, reverberating through their luxurious Accra penthouse. The two figures sprang apart, guilt painted across their faces like fresh wounds. Isai smoothed down her traditional Kent print dress with shaking hands, the same dress Amara had gifted her for her birthday just months ago. Sister, I can explain. Explain. Amara's voice climbed to a dangerous pitch. Explain how my husband's tongue was down my sister's throat in my own kitchen. Kwame straightened his tie, his successful businessman facade cracking like old paint. At 35, he commanded boardrooms across Ghana, but now he looked like a cornered child. Amara, you're overreacting. It's not what you think. Not what I think. She laughed, a sound sharp enough to cut glass. I think I walked into my home to find my Barren wife's replacement getting a preview of her new role. The word Barren hung in the air like a curse. For 3 years, it had been whispered behind her back at family gatherings, spat at her during heated arguments, used as justification for every slight and betrayal. The doctors had confirmed what the family already suspected: Amara's womb would never carry a child. You know that's not fair, Kwame said, but his eyes wouldn't meet hers. We've talked about this. The pressure from my family. Your family. Amara's voice dropped to a whisper more terrifying than any scream. I am your family. Or was, until you decided my sister's fertile womb was worth more than 7 years of marriage. Yes, I stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Amara, please understand. We didn't plan this. It just happened. And with the baby coming, the world stopped spinning. Amara felt the blood drain from her face as the words hit her like a physical blow. Baby. Kwame's jaw tightened. We were going to tell you properly. ESI is 3 months pregnant. The betrayal cut deeper than adultery, deeper than infidelity in marriage, deeper than anything Amara had imagined possible. Her own sister, the woman she had raised after their parents died, the woman she had put through university, the woman she had loved more than anyone in the world, was carrying the child she could never give her husband. Get out, she whispered. Amara, both voices started simultaneously. Get out. The roar echoed through the penthouse, and for the first time in years, Kwame looked genuinely afraid of his wife. As they scrambled to leave, Amara heard ESI whisper to Kwame, what if she tells people? What if she causes problems? Kwame's response chilled her to the bone, don't worry. Who's going to believe the bitter, barren wife over a pregnant woman and a successful man? As the door slammed shut, Amara sank to her knees among the champagne glass shards, her designer dress soaking up the spilled wine like blood. But instead of breaking down, something hard and calculating settled in her chest. They thought her barren womb made her powerless. They thought her love made her weak. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Osei, this is Detective Inspector Mensa. I have information about your husband's business dealings that might interest you. Can we meet? They were about to learn just how wrong they were. 3 hours later, Amara sat in a quiet corner booth at Buka restaurant in East Legon, her hands wrapped around a cup of sobolo that had long gone cold. Detective Inspector Mensa slid into the seat across from her, a woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and the kind of presence that commanded respect without demanding it. Mrs. Osei, thank you for meeting me on such short notice, Ajua said, her voice gentle but professional. I imagine today has been difficult for you. Amara studied the detective's face. How do you know about my situation? I don't, actually. But I do know about your husband's situation. Ajua pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents. My team has been investigating Kwame Osei's construction company for the past 6 months. Money laundering, tax evasion, bribery of government officials. The works. The words washed over Amara like a revelation. All those late nights Kwame claimed to be working, all those mysterious phone calls, all those cash deposits she'd questioned but never pushed too hard about. You're telling me my husband is a criminal? I'm telling you we have enough evidence to arrest him tomorrow if we wanted to. But we need someone on the inside. Someone with access to his personal files, his home office, his private conversations. Ajua leaned forward. Someone he trusts completely. Amara almost laughed. Trust? He was sleeping with my sister in my kitchen 3 hours ago. Ajua's eyebrows raised slightly. Oh. Well, then this might be perfect timing for both of us. What exactly are you asking me to do? Help us build our case. In exchange, when we seize his assets, and we will seize everything, you'll be protected as a cooperating witness rather than potentially complicit as his wife. The weight of the offer settled over Amara. Everything they'd built together, everything Kwame had earned through his domestic betrayal of the law, could be stripped away. The penthouse, the cars, the respect he commanded in Accra's business circles, all of it could disappear. There's something else, Ajua continued. We have evidence that your husband has been planning to divorce you anyway. He's been moving money into offshore accounts, preparing to leave you with nothing while he starts fresh with someone else. The betrayal cut fresh and deep. Not only had he been cheating, not only had he gotten her sister pregnant, but he'd been systematically stealing their shared future. The financial manipulation was just another layer of his deception. What would you need from me? Amara asked quietly. Access to his home office. Photographs of documents. Recording devices during his phone calls. And most importantly, you need to act normal. Pretend you know nothing about the affair, nothing about our investigation. Can you do that? Amara thought about Osei's pregnant belly, about Kwame's dismissive words, about years of being called barren and worthless. About being told no one would believe her over them. I can do more than that, she said, her voice steady as steel. I can give you everything. As she drove home through Accra's evening traffic, her phone rang. Kwame's name flashed on the screen. Amara, baby, where are you? We need to talk about what happened today. I'm coming home now, she said, injecting just the right amount of hurt and confusion into her voice. We definitely need to talk. Good. And Amara, I hope you'll be reasonable about this. It's a complicated situation, but we can work through it if you don't do anything dramatic. The threat was clear. Stay quiet, stay in line, accept your place as the discarded, barren wife. Of course, Kwame. I just want to understand. As she pulled into their building's parking garage, she saw Osei's car still in the visitor spot. Her sister hadn't gone home. She was upstairs, in Amara's home, probably comforting Amara's husband about the terrible burden of his unfaithful behavior. But as Amara rode the elevator to the penthouse, a slow smile spread across her face. Let them think they had won. Let them believe she would crumble under the weight of their betrayal. Tomorrow, she would begin dismantling their lives piece by piece. The elevator doors opened to reveal Kwame and Osei sitting close together on the couch, their hands intertwined, looking like the picture of star-crossed lovers instead of the cheating spouses they actually were. Amara, Kwame stood up, his face a mask of false concern. We've been waiting for you. We have a proposal. A proposal. Amara set down her purse with deliberate calm, every movement calculated to appear wounded but not dangerous. Please, I'm listening. Osei shifted uncomfortably on the couch, her hand moving protectively to her still flat stomach. Sister, we know this is hard for you, but we want to do right by everyone involved. Kwame nodded, slipping seamlessly into his businessman persona. The way I see it, we can handle this maturely. Divorce proceedings can be messy and expensive. But if we work together, everyone wins. Everyone wins. Amara repeated, sinking into the armchair across from them. How exactly does everyone win when my husband has been having an affair with my sister? It's not just an affair, Amara. Kwame's voice took on that patronizing tone she'd grown to hate. ESI is carrying my child. My heir. You know how important that is to my family, to our legacy. The casual cruelty of it stole her breath for a moment. Even now, even caught in flagrant infidelity, he was making this about her supposed failure as a woman. So what are you proposing? She asked quietly. ESI leaned forward eagerly. We could all live together. You could help raise the baby, be like an aunt. You've always been so good with children, and you'd finally have one to love. You want me to live with you and raise your bastard child. The words came out sharper than Amara intended, but she needed them to believe she was cracking under pressure, not planning their destruction. Kwame's jaw tightened. That's enough, Amara. The child is legitimate. ESI and I love each other. Since when? Since yesterday. Since last month. How long has this been going on? The guilt flickered across both their faces again, and Amara filed away their reactions for future use. Does it matter? Kwame stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked across glittering skyline. What matters is moving forward. I'm prepared to be generous in the divorce settlement. You'll have enough to start over somewhere else. Somewhere else. Not just divorced, but exiled from her own life, her own city, her own family. How generous, she asked, hating herself for the plaintive note in her voice but knowing it was necessary for the performance. 2 million cedis. Enough for a nice house in a quiet neighborhood, maybe start a small business. Amara almost laughed. 2 million cedis, less than what Kwame spent on a single business trip to Europe. She knew because she'd managed their household accounts for years. The man was worth at least 50 million cedis, and he was offering her pocket change to disappear quietly. And if I don't agree to this generous offer? Kwame turned back to her, his expression hardening. Then we'll have to handle this the difficult way. Contested divorce, character witnesses, medical testimony about your condition. It could get very public, very messy. And honestly, Amara, you might not like how it ends. There it was, the thread beneath the false kindness. Submit and take the scraps, or be publicly humiliated and left with even less. I need time to think about this, Amara said, standing up slowly. This is all very overwhelming. ESI jumped up and reached for her sister's hands. Of course, sister. Take all the time you need. We just want what's best for everyone. As ESI's fingers closed around hers, Amara noticed something that made her blood run cold, a familiar ring on her sister's finger. Their grandmother's wedding ring, the one Amara had treasured since she was 16, the one that had disappeared from her jewelry box 6 months ago. She thought she'd misplaced it. That's a beautiful ring, ESI, Amara said softly. Where did you get it? ESI's face flushed red. Oh, this. Kwame gave it to me. It was his grandmother's. Another lie. Another betrayal. They'd been stealing from her for months, maybe years, taking pieces of her life while she remained obliviously grateful for their presence in it. How lovely, Amara murmured. Well, I should let you two get back to your evening. I think I'll go to bed early. As she walked toward the bedroom, she heard Kwame whisper to ESI, see. She's being reasonable. This is going to be easier than I thought. In the privacy of her bathroom, Amara pulled out the recording device Detective Ajoa had given her during their meeting. 3 hours of conversation, including Kwame's admission of the affair, his threats about public humiliation, and his pathetically insulting settlement offer. But more than that, she now had confirmation of something she'd only suspected. They'd been planning this betrayal for much longer than a single afternoon's passion. This was calculated, premeditated domestic betrayal at its worst. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: "Emergency family meeting tomorrow 2 p.m. Your mother-in-law has heard rumors." Grace. Grace was Kwame's sister, the only member of his family who had ever treated Amara with genuine kindness. If she was reaching out secretly, it meant the vultures were already circling. Tomorrow would be the beginning of the war. But tonight, Amara had work to do in Kwame's office. As she prepared to become a spy in her own home, one thought kept her steady: they had no idea who they were dealing with. They saw a broken, barren woman. They were about to meet someone far more dangerous. At 3 in the morning, Amara stood outside Kwame's locked office door, her heart hammering against her ribs. Down the hall, she could hear the soft sounds of her husband and sister sleeping together in the guest room. They hadn't even tried to hide their affair once it was exposed. The disrespect burned almost as much as the betrayal itself. The spare key was exactly where it had always been, taped under the bottom drawer of the hallway table. Kwame's arrogance had always been his weakness. He never imagined anyone would dare invade his private space. The office door opened silently, and Amara slipped inside. Moonlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating Kwame's mahogany desk and the wall of awards that proclaimed his success to the world. Businessman of the Year, Outstanding Contribution to Ghana's Development, Pillar of the Community, all meaningless now that she knew the truth behind his empire. She moved directly to his filing cabinet, her fingers finding the lock that she'd watched him open countless times during their marriage. The combination was pathetically predictable: ESI's birthday. Even his passwords had been a betrayal. Inside, she found folders labeled with coded names that meant nothing to her, but she photographed everything anyway, just as Detective Ajua had instructed. Bank statements showing transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, invoices for construction materials that were never delivered, payment records to government officials disguised as consulting fees. But it was the folder marked personal that made her hands shake with rage. Divorce papers, already drawn up and dated 6 months ago. A prenuptial agreement she'd never seen before, supposedly signed before their marriage, that would leave her with virtually nothing. Medical records, her medical records, with handwritten notes in the margins about mental instability and obsessive behavior regarding fertility. They had been building a case against her for months, painting her as an unstable woman whose desperate desire for children had driven her to irrational behavior. The emotional manipulation ran deeper than she'd ever suspected. At the bottom of the folder, she found something that stopped her breath entirely: a life insurance policy on her, taken out just 4 months ago, naming Kwame as the sole beneficiary. $2 million, American dollars, not cedis. More than he'd offered her in the settlement. The implication was clear and terrifying. They weren't just planning to divorce her and humiliate her. They were planning to replace her entirely, and the insurance policy suggested they'd consider the permanent solution to the problem of Amara Osei. Her hands trembling, she photographed everything, including a calendar where Kwame had marked his accident on a date just 3 weeks away. The same week she was supposed to travel to Kumasi for a business conference, alone. A sound from the hallway made her freeze. Footsteps, soft but approaching. She quickly closed the filing cabinet, erased any sign of her presence, and crept to the window. The footsteps paused outside the door. "Kwame." ESI's voice, thick with sleep. "Are you in there?" Amara pressed herself against the wall behind the door, barely breathing. "Must have been my imagination," ESI murmured, and the footsteps retreated. Amara waited another 10 minutes before slipping out of the office and back to her own bedroom. As she plugged the camera's memory card into her laptop, her phone rang. Detective Ajua's number. "I hope I didn't wake you," the detective's voice was alert, professional. "But we have a problem. Someone tipped off your husband about our investigation." We think he's planning to run. Run where? We're not sure yet, but our surveillance spotted him at the airport 3 hours ago, not as a passenger but meeting with someone near the private jet terminal. He's moving faster than we anticipated. Amara's mind raced. What does this mean for the investigation? It means we need to move tomorrow, not next week. Can you get us into his office before noon? We need those files before he has a chance to destroy them. I'm already one step ahead of you, Amara said, looking at the dozens of photographs downloading onto her computer. But there's something else you need to know. She told Ajo about the insurance policy, about the marked calendar, about the divorce papers designed to paint her as unstable. The silence stretched long enough that Amara wondered if the call had dropped. Mrs. Osei, Ajo finally said, I think your life may be in immediate danger. Can you get out of the house tonight? And go where? If he's planning what I think he's planning, running will only make me look guilty of something. Then we accelerate everything. The family meeting this afternoon, can you wear a wire? Amara thought about facing Kwame's family, all the people who had whispered about her barren womb, who had made her feel like a failure for years. Tomorrow, she would sit among them one last time, not as the desperate, childless wife, but as the woman who would destroy their golden boy. I can do better than that, she said. I can get them to confess to everything. As she ended the call, Amara caught sight of herself in the bedroom mirror. The woman staring back looked nothing like the broken figure who had found her husband cheating 12 hours ago. This woman looked dangerous. Down the hall, she heard Osei giggle at something Kwame whispered, followed by the soft sounds of intimacy. They were celebrating their victory, confident that the barren wife had been defeated. They had no idea that by tomorrow evening, they would both be in handcuffs. But first, she had one more call to make. Grace, Kwame's sister, answered on the second ring. Amara. Is everything alright? Grace, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Has Kwame asked you to lie for him about anything recently? The pause told her everything she needed to know. Oh, Amara, Grace whispered. What has he done? Grace's living room in East Airport felt like a sanctuary compared to the tension of the penthouse. At 62, Kwame's older sister had always been the moral compass of the family, which is why her tears now cut Amara to the core. I should have told you months ago, Grace whispered, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. But I thought maybe I was wrong, maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. Tell me everything, Amara said gently, though every muscle in her body was coiled with anticipation. It started at my birthday party in January. I saw them together, Kwame and Osei, on my balcony. They were arguing in hushed voices, and when they saw me, they jumped apart like teenagers caught kissing. Grace shook her head. Osei made some excuse about Kwame helping her with a work problem, but the way they looked at each other. January. The affair had been going on for 8 months, not the few weeks Amara had assumed. Then there were the family dinners where Osei would suddenly know things about Kwame's business that she shouldn't have known. Private things. And the way our mother started asking pointed questions about when you two would resolve your marriage issues. What kind of questions? Grace's face crumpled with shame. She asked if Kwame had considered other options for continuing the family line. She said in her day, men took second wives when they first couldn't provide children. She made it sound so reasonable, so normal. The systematic nature of their campaign against her became clearer with every revelation. This wasn't just an affair, it was a coordinated family conspiracy to replace her. There's more, Grace continued. 2 weeks ago, Kwame asked me to be a witness in a legal proceeding. He said it was routine business paperwork, but when I read the document, she pulled out a folded paper from her purse. It's a sworn statement about your behavior over the past year. They wanted me to sign it, saying I'd witnessed you having emotional breakdowns, throwing things, threatening Kwame when he tried to discuss practical solutions to your fertility problems. Amara read the document, her anger building with each fabricated incident. According to this statement, she was an unstable woman who had become violent and obsessive about having children, making her an unfit wife and a danger to herself and others. I refused to sign it, Grace said quickly. I told Kwame I'd never seen you behave that way, that you were one of the most composed people I knew. But he said other family members had already given similar statements. Who? Your mother-in-law, Kwame's cousin Samuel, even your own Aunt Rebecca. The betrayal kept expanding like ripples in a pond. Her own family members had been recruited to destroy her credibility. Grace, I need to ask you something very important. Do you believe I'm mentally unstable? Of course not. That's why I couldn't sign the paper. Amara, you've handled years of pressure about children with more grace than anyone should have to. If anything, you've been too patient with all of us. Then will you help me? Grace studied her sister-in-law's face. Help you how? This afternoon's family meeting, it's not just about addressing rumors. They're planning to ambush me with these 4 statements, probably demand I seek psychiatric help or agree to leave quietly. They want to paint me as the villain in this story. What do you need me to do? Amara pulled out her phone and showed Grace the recording app Detective Ajoa had installed. I need you to get them talking. Ask questions that will make them reveal the truth about their plans. You want me to record my own family. I want you to help me save my life. The weight of those words settled between them. Grace had read the same insurance policy papers Amara had photographed. She knew what "is accident" meant on Kwame's calendar. They are really planning to hurt you. I think they're planning to kill me and make it look accidental. The insurance policy, the mental instability narrative, the convenient business trip to Kumasi, it all adds up to the perfect crime. Grace was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, her eyes held the same steel that Amara was learning to recognize in herself. What time is this meeting? 2:00. I'll be there. And Amara, I'll make sure they tell us everything. As Amara drove back through Accra's afternoon traffic, her phone rang. Kwame's name on the screen made her stomach clench, but she answered with practiced casualness. Hello, sweetheart. Where are you? You left early this morning without saying goodbye. I needed some air, some time to think. I had breakfast with Grace. A pause. What did you talk about? The situation. She's concerned about the family meeting today. Another pause, longer this time. Amara, I need you to understand something before this afternoon. My family loves you, but they are also concerned about your well-being. Some of the things you've said and done lately. What things? The crying fits, the anger outbursts, the accusations. It's not like you, and we're worried. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment Amara almost doubted her own memories. Had she been unstable? Had grief over her infertility made her irrational? Then she remembered the insurance policy and her resolve hardened. You're right, she said carefully. I haven't been myself lately. Maybe talking to the family will help. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. We all want what's best for you. As she hung up, Amara realized something that chilled her. Kwame genuinely believed his own lies. In his mind, he wasn't the villain of this story, he was the long-suffering husband trying to help his mentally unstable wife while building a future with the woman he really loved. That level of self-deception made him infinitely more dangerous than a man who knew he was doing wrong. At exactly 2 p.m., Amara walked into her mother-in-law's living room in Lab 1, where 5 people waited to destroy her life. She was ready to destroy theirs instead. The Osei family living room felt like a courtroom, with Amara cast as the defendant facing a jury that had already reached their verdict. Her mother-in-law, Martha, presided from her throne-like armchair, flanked by Kwame's cousin Samuel and Aunt Rebecca. Kwame sat beside ESI on the couch, their hands intertwined in a display of united front that made Amara's stomach turn. Only Grace seemed uncomfortable, perched on the edge of her chair with nervous energy. "Amara, dear," Martha began, her voice dripping with false concern, "we've asked you here because we're worried about you." "Very worried." "Worried about what, Mama?" Amara kept her voice steady, innocent. Samuel leaned forward, his expression serious. "About your behavior over the past months. The emotional outburst, the accusations, the instability." "I'm sorry, but I'm not sure what you mean." Martha exchanged a meaningful look with Rebecca. "Darling, denial is the first sign of a troubled mind. We have witnesses to your erratic behavior." "What witnesses?" Rebecca cleared her throat dramatically. "Just last month, at the church social, you screamed at little Okojo when she spilled juice on your dress. You called her a careless brat and made her cry." Amara stared at her aunt in shock. "That never happened. I helped clean up Okojo's spill and told her it was perfectly fine." "See?" Martha gestured as if this denial proved her point. "You don't even remember your own actions. That's very concerning, dear." The recording device in Amara's purse captured every word as the family members took turns describing incidents that had never occurred. According to them, she had thrown dishes at Kwame during dinner, accused random women of flirting with her husband, and threatened to make them all pay for their supposed plots against her. "These episodes are getting worse," Kwame said softly, his performance Oscar-worthy in its sincerity. "Yesterday, when you found ESI and me talking privately, you immediately jumped to the most dramatic conclusions." "Talking privately?" Amara repeated. "Is that what we are calling it now?" The room fell silent. ESI shifted uncomfortably, her hand moving to her stomach in a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Martha, whose eyes sharpened with interest. "What exactly did you think you saw?" Martha asked carefully. This was it, the moment Amara had been waiting for. "I thought I saw my husband kissing my sister. I thought I saw them embracing like lovers. But you're all telling me I'm mentally unstable, so maybe I imagined it." The trap was perfectly laid. If they admitted the affair, they validated her accusations and destroyed their narrative of mental instability. If they denied it, they had to explain why ESI was living in the penthouse and why they looked so guilty. Grace, bless her soul, played her part perfectly. "Kwame, what is Amara talking about? Why would she think she saw you kissing ESI?" Kwame's jaw worked soundlessly for several seconds. Finally, ESI broke first. "Because it's true," she whispered. "We are lovers. And I'm pregnant with his child." The words hung in the air like a bomb blast. Martha's hand flew to her chest, Samuel's mouth dropped open, and Rebecca looked genuinely shocked for the first time in the meeting. "Pregnant?" Martha's voice was barely a whisper. 3 months, ESI continued, tears flowing now. "We tried to fight it, Mama Martha, but we fell in love. And when we discovered the baby, it changed everything," Kwame finished. "I couldn't deny my child or the woman carrying it." Martha turned to Amara with something like pity in her eyes. "Oh, my dear girl. No wonder you've been having these episodes. The shock of discovery, the jealousy, the pain of knowing your sister could give your husband what you never could. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. Even in the face of adultery and betrayal, they were making Amara's barrenness the real villain of the story." "So the solution," Samuel said slowly, "is what exactly?" "Divorce," Kwame said simply. "Amara deserves to be free to find happiness elsewhere, and I deserve to be with the woman who can give me a family." "And the child?" Rebecca asked. "Will be raised with love and stability," ESI added. "Perhaps Amara could even be part of the baby's life, if she gets the help she needs for her condition." There it was, the complete narrative. Amara was mentally unstable, driven mad by jealousy and infertility. Kwame and ESI were tragic lovers caught in an impossible situation. The family would rally around the new couple and their precious heir, while the barren wife would be gracefully exiled to the margins of their lives. What kind of help? Grace asked quietly. Martha pulled out a brochure from her purse. There's a lovely private facility in Kumasi. Very discreet, very effective for women dealing with feminine troubles. A few months there, and Amara could come back refreshed, ready to start a new chapter. Amara looked at the brochure. Serenity Gardens Private Wellness Center. She'd heard of it, a place where wealthy families sent inconvenient relatives to disappear for a while. Some people went in for a few months. Some never came out. And if I refused treatment? The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kwame's mask finally slipped, revealing the calculating stranger beneath. Then we'll have to pursue other options. Legal guardianship, perhaps. If you're deemed mentally incompetent to make decisions for yourself, you'd have me declared insane. We'd have you protected, Martha corrected gently. From yourself and from the harm your condition might cause others. Amara looked around the room at these people who had supposedly loved her for 7 years. Every face showed the same cold determination. She was an obstacle to be removed, by cooperation or by force. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Of course, Kwame's voice was magnanimous in victory. But don't take too long, Amara. These situations have a way of escalating if left unaddressed. As the meeting broke up with false hugs and hollow promises to pray for her, Grace caught Amara's eye and nodded almost imperceptibly. The recording device had captured everything: the admission of adultery, the pregnancy, the threats of forced institutionalization, and most damning of all, their complete lack of remorse for destroying her life. Walking to her car, Amara felt oddly calm. Tomorrow, Detective Ajua would have everything she needed to arrest Kwame for his financial crimes. But tonight, Amara had her own justice to dispense. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. Dr. Yasantewa, Ghana's most respected fertility specialist and, more importantly, a woman who had been trying to help Amara conceive for 3 years. Dr. Asantewa. It's Amara Osei. I need to ask you about my medical records. Of course, dear. What can I help you with? Has anyone else requested copies of my files recently? My husband, perhaps, or anyone claiming to represent our family. A pause. Amara, that would be highly irregular. Why do you ask? Because someone has been forging medical documents about my mental state, and I suspect they may have used information from my fertility treatments to make their lies more convincing. That's a very serious accusation. If someone has been misusing your medical information, we need to involve the authorities immediately. I'm already working with the authorities, Dr. Asantewa. But I need you to do something for me. Tomorrow morning, I need you to call a press conference. As Amara outlined her plan, she could practically hear the doctor smile through the phone. Oh, my dear girl, Dr. Asantewa said when she finished. It would be my absolute pleasure. The war was about to begin, and Amara intended to win it decisively. The next morning, Amara woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word of Dr. Asantewa's press conference had spread through Accra like wildfire, and everyone wanted to know why Ghana's most prominent fertility doctor was making public statements about patient confidentiality and medical fraud. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Golden Tulip Hotel. By 9:30, the parking lot was packed with media vans, and Amara could see the chaos from her penthouse window. Kwame had left early for emergency meetings, and ESI was mysteriously absent, probably hiding at her mother's house until the storm passed. At exactly 10 a.m., Dr. Asantewa stepped up to the podium, flanked by 2 lawyers and a representative from the Ghana Medical Association. She looked every inch the distinguished professional who had dedicated 30 years to helping women conceive. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying the authority of decades in medicine. I am here today to address a serious breach of medical ethics and patient confidentiality that has come to my attention. Amara watched from her laptop as every major news outlet in Ghana streamed the conference live. For the past 3 years, I have been treating Mrs. Amara Osei for fertility issues. During this time, she has conducted herself with grace, dignity, and remarkable emotional strength despite the challenges she has faced. She is not, as some recent documents have suggested, mentally unstable, emotionally volatile, or psychologically unfit. The doctor held up a thick folder. These are Mrs. Osei's actual medical records. They show a woman dealing maturely with a difficult medical condition, seeking appropriate treatment, and maintaining her mental health throughout a process that would challenge anyone. However, Dr. Asantewa continued, I have recently become aware that falsified medical documents bearing my forged signature have been circulated, documents that paint an entirely different picture of Mrs. Osei's mental state. These documents are not only medically fraudulent but potentially criminal in their intent. The assembled reporters leaned forward, sensing the story was bigger than medical malpractice. I am calling for a full investigation into who created these documents and why. Medical records are sacred trust between doctor and patient, and their falsification for personal gain is not only unethical, it's a crime that could destroy innocent lives. As Dr. Asantewa fielded questions about medical fraud and patient rights, Amara's phone rang. Detective Ajua's name flashed on the screen. Are you watching this? The detective asked without preamble. Every second. Brilliant move. By tomorrow, every media outlet in Ghana will be investigating who forged those medical records. The public scrutiny alone will force people to come forward with information. And Kwame's arrest. Happening as we speak. My team moved on his office an hour ago. We found everything, the offshore accounts, the bribery records, even the insurance policy on your life. Amara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. What about ESI? As an accomplice to fraud and potentially conspiracy to commit murder. She'll be arrested this afternoon. Through her penthouse windows, Amara could see police cars surrounding Kwame's office building 12 blocks away. After months of careful planning, their house of cards was finally collapsing. Her phone buzzed with another call, Grace, sounding breathless with excitement. Amara, are you watching the news? They are saying Kwame has been arrested for money laundering and fraud. I'm watching, Amara said calmly. And there are reports that he and ESI were planning to have you declared mentally incompetent. The whole family is in chaos. Mama Martha is furious, saying she had no idea how far things had gone. Did she really not know? Grace was quiet for a moment. I think she knew about the affair and the pregnancy. I think she even supported the idea of replacing you as Kwame's wife. But the insurance policy, the forged medical records, the plan to have you institutionalized or worse. I don't think even she realized how dangerous this had become. What's the family saying now? Damage control. They're all claiming they were manipulated by Kwame, that they thought they were helping with a difficult family situation. Samuel is already talking to lawyers about how to distance himself from Kwame's business dealings. The satisfaction Amara felt was cold and complete. The same family members who had gathered yesterday to destroy her credibility were now scrambling to save their own reputations. At 2 p.m., she watched from her living room as ESI was led away in handcuffs from her mother's house in Danseman. The pregnant woman who had thought herself so clever, so entitled to steal another woman's life, now looked small and frightened as news cameras captured every moment of her arrest. At 4 p.m., Kwame's pap walk dominated every television screen in Ghana. The businessman of the year shuffled in handcuffs and prison clothes, his empire crumbling around him. The man who had called her barren and worthless, who had threatened to have her declared insane, who had planned her death for insurance money, now faced decades in prison. But the moment that satisfied Amara most came at 6 p.m., during the evening news. A reporter interviewed Amara Osei outside her Lab 1 home, and for the first time in 7 years, Amara's mother-in-law looked genuinely humbled. Mrs. Osei, the reporter asked, what do you say to critics who claim your family systematically abused your daughter-in-law? Martha's composure cracked. Amara is a good woman. I made mistakes. I let tradition and disappointment cloud my judgment about what was right and wrong. If she can forgive us, if she can forgive me, perhaps we can find a way to heal as a family. It was the apology Amara had waited 7 years to hear, though it came only after the complete destruction of everything the Osei family had built their pride upon. As the sun set over Accra, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Amara stood on her penthouse balcony and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: complete freedom. No husband to please, no in-laws to appease, no sister to protect from the consequences of her own choices. Her phone rang one final time. An international number she didn't recognize. Mrs. Osei. This is Jennifer Walsh from CNN International. We'd like to interview you about your story, the medical fraud, the domestic betrayal, the insurance scheme. The world is calling you the woman who proved that being underestimated can be the most dangerous mistake of all. Amara smiled, looking out over the city where her new life was just beginning. I'd be happy to tell my story, she said. But let's make one thing clear from the start: I was never the victim in this tale. I was always the heroine. Tomorrow, she would begin the process of rebuilding her life. But tonight, she would sleep peacefully for the first time in months, knowing that justice had been served and that no one would ever again mistake her quietness for weakness. The Barren woman had proved them all wrong indeed. 6 months later, Amara stood in the marble lobby of Osei Construction's former headquarters, now renamed Asantewa Development Corporation. The irony wasn't lost on her. The building that had once symbolized her husband's empire now housed her own growing business empire. Mrs. Osei, the contractors are here for the final walkthrough, her assistant, Kofi, announced as he approached with a tablet full of scheduling updates. Amara nodded, straightening the jacket of her custom-tailored business suit. The woman who had once been dismissed as a barren wife now commanded a room with the quiet confidence of someone who had rebuilt her life from the ashes of betrayal. The transformation hadn't been easy. The first month after Kwame's arrest had brought a media circus that threatened to consume her. Reporters camped outside her penthouse, distant relatives emerged to claim relationships they'd never acknowledged before, and business associates who had ignored her for years suddenly wanted to be her best friends. But Amara had learned the art of strategic silence during her marriage. She gave exactly 3 interviews, one to CNN International, one to BBC Africa, and one to Joy News Ghana. In each, she presented herself not as a victim, but as a woman who had used intelligence, patience, and careful planning to expose the truth and protect herself. The interviews had made her an international symbol of resilience and smart revenge, leading to book deals, speaking engagements, and most lucratively, investment opportunities from women around the world who saw themselves in her story. The penthouse renovation is complete, Kofi continued, scrolling through his notes. The master bedroom has been converted into your private office, and the guest room the guest room has been turned into a library. Amara smiled grimly. The room where Kwame and ESI had consummated their betrayal now housed first edition books on business strategy, law, and women's rights. It seemed like appropriate justice. What's the update on the Kumasi project? Groundbreaking next month. The Women's Shelter and Business Training Center will be fully operational by year's end. The Kumasi project was Amara's masterpiece of poetic justice. Using the money from Kwame's seized assets that legally became hers as his wife before their divorce was finalized, she was building a facility to help women escape domestic betrayal and economic abuse. The location was particularly satisfying, on the exact plot of land where Kwame had planned to build luxury condominiums using his laundered money. And the other matter, she asked quietly. Kofi's expression grew somber. ESI gave birth last week. A daughter. She's named her Akosua. The news hit Amara with unexpected complexity. For months, she tried not to think about her sister's pregnancy, about the child that represented everything she couldn't have and everything Kwame had betrayed her to get. But now, faced with the reality of an innocent baby caught in the chaos of adult failures, she felt something she hadn't expected: concern. How is she managing in prison? The guards say she cries a lot. The baby is with her mother for now, but there are complications. Mrs. Mensah is 73 and not in good health. Social services is looking for a more permanent solution. Amara was quiet for a long moment, processing implications she hadn't fully considered. ESI would serve at least 3 years for her role in the conspiracy against Amara's life. Kwame faced 15 to 20 years for money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Their daughter would grow up knowing her parents as criminals, surrounded by the shame and stigma of their choices. "Schedule a meeting with family court," she said finally. "I want to discuss guardianship options for the child." Kofi's eyebrows shot up. "Mom. She's my niece, Kofi. Whatever sins her parents committed, she's innocent. And despite everything, she's still family." It was a decision that would shock everyone who knew the story, but Amara had spent months learning to distinguish between justice and cruelty. Justice was ensuring that Kwame and ESI faced consequences for their actions. Cruelty would be allowing an innocent child to suffer for those same actions. Her phone rang with a call that made her smile. Grace, who had become not just an ally but a genuine friend through the aftermath of the family's destruction. "Amara, darling, have you seen today's business journal?" "Not yet." "Good news or bad news?" "Wonderful news. Asantewa Development Corporation just made the list of Ghana's fastest growing businesses owned by women. You're being featured on the cover next month." The success still felt surreal sometimes. What had started as a desire for justice had evolved into something larger, a business empire built on the principles Kwame's empire had lacked: transparency, integrity, and genuine care for employees and communities. "There's something else," Grace continued. "Martha would like to see you." Amara's good mood dimmed slightly. Her former mother-in-law had attempted several reconciliations over the past months, each one more desperate than the last. The proud matriarch who had once dismissed Amara as inadequate now found herself socially ostracized, her family name permanently tainted by her son's crimes. What does she want this time? To apologize properly. And to ask for your help with something. "My help." "The family is facing bankruptcy, Amara. Kwame's legal fees, the seized assets, the civil lawsuits from his victims, we're going to lose the family home. Martha's pride is finally broken, and she wants to ask if you might consider assistance." The request was breathtaking in its irony. The woman who had spent years calling her barren and insufficient, who had participated in plans to have her declared mentally incompetent, now needed the financial help of the wife she had helped destroy. "I'll think about it," Amara said, though she already knew her answer. That evening, she drove through Accra's familiar streets to the Lab 1 house where she had been ambushed and threatened just 6 months earlier. The same living room, the same furniture, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Where once there had been imperious confidence, now there was desperate humility. Amara Osei looked older, smaller, worn down by months of public shame and private guilt. When she saw Amara, tears immediately filled her eyes. "My daughter," she whispered, using the term she had never once applied to Amara during their marriage. "Thank you for coming. Grace said you wanted to see me. I wanted to beg your forgiveness. And to ask for your mercy." For 7 years, Amara had dreamed of this moment, her proud mother-in-law humbled, forced to acknowledge her worth. Now that it was happening, she felt no satisfaction, only sadness for how much pain everyone could have been spared if they had simply chosen love over pride from the beginning. "Martha, I forgave you months ago. Holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you. Then you help us save the house." Amara looked around the room where she had been systematically destroyed by people who should have protected her. Then she thought about Kwame and Esai's daughter, who would one day ask questions about her family, who deserved to have some connection to her heritage that wasn't tainted by shame. "I'll help you save the house," she said quietly. "But not for you. For Akojua." Martha's face crumpled with relief and renewed shame. "You're going to take care of Esai's baby. I'm going to make sure that when she's old enough to ask questions about her family, there are some answers that don't involve crime and betrayal. She'll know she has an aunt who chose love over revenge, who chose to build rather than destroy." As she drove home through Accra's evening traffic, Amara reflected on how completely her life had changed. The Barren wife who had been mocked and dismissed had become a successful businesswoman, a symbol of resilience, and now, unexpectedly, a mother figure to her betrayer's child. Tomorrow, she would begin the legal process of gaining guardianship of baby Akojua. It wouldn't be easy, and it certainly wasn't the revenge anyone had expected. But as Amara had learned over the past months, the most powerful revenge of all was refusing to let other people's cruelty make you cruel in return. The best way to prove them wrong wasn't to become like them, it was to become everything they could never be. The family court hearing felt like the final chapter in a story that had begun with betrayal and was ending with something unexpectedly beautiful. Amara sat in the front row, flanked by her legal team, facing a judge who had followed her case through the media coverage and legal proceedings of the past year. "Mrs. Osei," Judge Akoto began, "guardianship of a child is not something this court takes lightly, especially given the circumstances surrounding this case. You're asking us to grant you custody of the daughter born to your former husband and sister, two people who conspired against your life. Can you explain your motivations?" Amara stood, feeling the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. "Your Honor, for 7 years I was told I was incomplete because I couldn't have children. I was mocked, dismissed, and eventually betrayed because of my infertility. But I've learned that being a mother isn't about giving birth, it's about choosing to love and protect a child regardless of the circumstances that brought them into your life." She gestured toward the infant carrier where 10-month-old Akojua slept peacefully, unaware that her future was being decided in this solemn courtroom. "This child is innocent of her parents' crimes. She deserves to grow up knowing she is loved, not because of who her parents are, but because of who she is. I can give her stability, resources, and most importantly, an example of what it means to choose forgiveness over hatred." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "And what of the biological parents? Mr. Kwame Osei is serving a 15-year sentence, and Miss Esai Mensah has 8 more months on her conspiracy conviction. Both have opposed this guardianship petition." That was the understatement of the year. From prison, both Kwame and Esai had fought viciously against Amara's guardianship petition. Kwame had argued that giving their daughter to his vindictive ex-wife was cruel and unusual punishment. Esai had claimed that Amara's actions were motivated by revenge, not love. Their opposition had only strengthened Amara's resolve. "Your Honor, I understand their objections. But I would ask the court to consider their track record of decision-making regarding this child's welfare. They conceived her during an adulterous affair, used her existence to justify destroying their family relationships, and were ultimately willing to commit serious crimes to secure what they saw as her financial future. Their judgment regarding her best interest has been consistently poor." Judge Akoto reviewed the thick file before him. The court has reviewed extensive testimony from social workers, child psychologists, and family members. Mrs. Grace Osei has spoken powerfully in favor of this guardianship, as have several other family members who have observed your interactions with the child over the past months. Indeed, Grace had become Amara's strongest advocate. She had testified that in the 6 months since Amara had begun caring for Akojua during prison visits and family gatherings, she had never seen someone take to motherhood more naturally. "There's also the matter of resources," the judge continued. "Mrs. Osei, your business success over the past year has been remarkable. The court understands you're prepared to establish a substantial trust fund for the child's education and future." "Yes, Your Honor. 5 million cedis, to be managed by independent trustees until she reaches 25. Additionally, I've established a scholarship program in her name to help other children whose lives have been disrupted by parental incarceration. It was more money than Kwame had ever saved legitimately, funded entirely by the profits from Amara's business ventures and speaking engagements. The irony was perfect. The child conceived to replace the Barren wife would be raised with wealth that wife had earned through her own intelligence and resilience. The court also notes that you've maintained the family home where Mr. Kwame Osei's mother continues to live, ensuring the child will have connections to her paternal heritage. Family is important, Your Honor, even when individual family members make terrible choices. Akojua should know her grandmother, her Aunt Grace, and her extended family. She should understand her heritage and her story, including the difficult parts. Judge Okoto was quiet for several long minutes, reviewing documents and considering the extraordinary circumstances before him. Finally, he looked up. In 30 years on this bench, I have never seen a case quite like this one. Mrs. Osei, you have transformed the story of betrayal and domestic abuse into something approaching grace. The court grants your petition for permanent guardianship of Akojua Osei Mensah. The gavel's bang echoed through the courtroom, finalizing a decision that would reshape multiple lives. As Amara lifted baby Akojua from her carrier, the child's dark eyes opened and seemed to focus on her face with what looked remarkably like recognition. "Hello, little one," Amara whispered. "Welcome to your new life." Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with their predictable questions about revenge and forgiveness. But Amara's attention was focused on the small bundle in her arms, this child who had unknowingly become the instrument of her parents' downfall and now represented hope for a different kind of future. Grace approached with tears in her eyes. "She's lucky to have you, Amara. I'm lucky to have her. After years of thinking I was incomplete, I realized I was just waiting for the right child to love." That evening, in the penthouse that had once witnessed the worst betrayal of her life, Amara sat in the nursery she had created from Kwame's former office. The space that had once housed his criminal empire now contained a crib, changing table, and shelves full of children's books. As she fed Akojua her evening bottle, Amara reflected on the journey from devastation to triumph. A year ago, she had been a woman defined by what she lacked: children, respect, agency in her own life. Tonight, she was a successful businesswoman, a mother, and a symbol of resilience for women around the world. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Asantewa, so the news about the guardianship. "Congratulations. You've proven that motherhood chooses us as much as we choose it." Another message followed from Detective Ajoa, now retired and working as a private investigator. "Beautiful ending to an incredible story. That little girl won the lottery when she got you as a mother." But the message that surprised her most came from an unexpected source, a letter delivered by courier from Sowon prison. ESI's handwriting, shaky and desperate. "Sister, I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what I did. But please love my daughter the way you always loved me, even when I didn't deserve it. Make her proud of the Mensah name, even if her parents brought it shame. Tell her that her mother's greatest regret is not the prison sentence, but losing the sister who would have been the best aunt in the world. Thank you for being better than me in every way that matters." The letter should have brought satisfaction, the ultimate admission of defeat from the woman who had tried to steal her life. Instead, it brought sadness for all the relationships that had been destroyed by pride, jealousy, and greed. As Akojua fell asleep in her arms, Amara made a silent promise. This child would grow up knowing she was loved not because of her parents' choices, but in spite of them. She would learn that families are built through loyalty and love, not just blood. And most importantly, she would understand that a woman's worth is never determined by her ability to bear children, but by her ability to love, protect, and nurture the children who need her most. The Barren woman had indeed proved them all wrong, not by bearing a child, but by becoming a mother in every way that truly mattered. 5 years had passed since the day Amara walked in on her husband's betrayal, and the woman standing before the mirror in her Accra penthouse bore little resemblance to the broken wife who had once knelt among champagne glass shards. At 38, Amara Osei had become one of Ghana's most successful businesswomen, a sought-after speaker on resilience and empowerment, and most importantly, the devoted mother of 5-year-old Akosua. Mama Amara, is today the big day? Akosua asked from the doorway, still in her pajamas decorated with colorful butterflies. Yes, sweetheart. Today is very big indeed. Amara knelt to her daughter's level, for that's what Akosua had always been to her, not a burden inherited from betrayal, but a gift that had come through unexpected circumstances. Today was the grand opening of the Amara Osei Center for Women's Empowerment in Kumasi, the largest facility of its kind in West Africa. Built on the exact plot of land where Kwame had planned his luxury condos, it now housed a business school, legal aid clinic, counseling center, and temporary housing for women escaping domestic betrayal and abuse. But more than that, today marked the end of a promise Amara had made to herself in the depths of her darkest moments, to transform her pain into power, her betrayal into blessing for countless other women. Mama Grace is here, Akosua announced, running toward the elevator where Grace emerged with her arms full of flowers and a smile that had become a constant source of warmth in their lives. Grace had become more than just Kwame's sister. She was Akosua's beloved aunt and Amara's closest friend, proof that family bonds could be rebuilt on foundations stronger than blood. The city is buzzing about today, Grace said, embracing both Amara and Akosua. The president herself is coming to the opening ceremony. CNN is sending a film crew. And there are already women traveling from across West Africa to attend the first workshops. Amara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and privilege. Her story had resonated far beyond Ghana's borders, inspiring women worldwide who saw in her journey a roadmap for transforming betrayal into triumph. Any word from? Grace's voice trailed off, but Amara knew what she was asking. Kwame was released last month. I heard he's living quietly in Tokoradi, working at his cousin's fishing business. Yes, I get out next week. The years had changed them all. Kwame's early release for good behavior had made headlines, but the man who emerged from prison bore little resemblance to the arrogant businessman who had once dismissed his wife as barren and worthless. Prison had broken his spirit in ways that Amara's revenge never could have. He was now a middle-aged man with no business, no reputation, and no family willing to claim him publicly. ESI's transformation had been different, marked by genuine remorse and a determination to somehow earn back the sister she had betrayed. Her letters from prison had evolved from desperate justifications to thoughtful reflections on the choices that had destroyed their relationship. She had completed every rehabilitation program available, earned her degree in social work, and expressed a desire to dedicate her life to helping women make better choices than she had. Will you see her when she's released? Grace asked carefully. Eventually. She's asked to meet Akosua, and I think that's important. But on my terms, when I'm ready. Akosua, now 5 and wise beyond her years, had been told age-appropriate versions of her story. She knew that Mama Amara had chosen to love her when her birth parents couldn't take care of her. She knew she had other family members who had made mistakes but were still part of her story. Most importantly, she knew she was deeply wanted and loved. The drive to Kumasi took them through landscapes that held memories of Amara's journey. Past the hospital where she had received her infertility diagnosis 7 years ago, a diagnosis that had once felt like a death sentence but now seemed like the universe's way of preparing her for a different kind of motherhood. Past the courthouse where she had gained guardianship of Akosua. Past the women's shelter in Accra that had been her first venture into philanthropy. At the center itself, hundreds of people had gathered for the opening ceremony. Women who had escaped abusive marriages, young entrepreneurs seeking business training, university students researching domestic violence prevention, and journalists from across Africa covering the story of transformation. President Nana Akufo-Addo herself cut the ceremonial ribbon, praising Amara as an example of how individual strength can become collective empowerment. But the moment that moved Amara most came during her speech, when she looked out at the audience and saw a familiar face in the back row. Dr. Yasantewa, the fertility specialist who had been the first person to truly see and validate Amara's strength during her darkest period. 5 years ago, Amara began, her voice carrying clearly through the packed auditorium. I believed my worth as a woman was determined by my ability to bear children. I was told I was incomplete, insufficient, barren in every sense of the word. Murmurs of recognition rippled through the audience. Many of these women had heard similar dismissals in their own lives. But I learned something powerful during my journey from victim to survivor to advocate. Our value is never determined by what others say we lack. Our strength is revealed not by avoiding betrayal, but by how we respond to it. Our legacy is built not on the children we birth, but on the lives we touch and the changes we create. She gestured toward Akosua, who sat in the front row between Grace and Martha, the grandmother who had spent years seeking redemption through acts of service and love. Today, this little girl calls me Mama not because I gave birth to her, but because I chose to love her unconditionally. She will grow up knowing that families are built on commitment, not biology. That women support each other, not tear each other down. That forgiveness is not weakness, it's the ultimate act of power. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes, but Amara's attention was focused on Akosua's proud smile and the tears of recognition in the eyes of women who saw their own struggles reflected in her story. After the ceremony, as the crowds dispersed and the media crews packed their equipment, Amara walked through the center's halls with quiet satisfaction. The business training rooms where women would learn to become financially independent. The legal clinic where they would understand their rights. The counseling center where they would heal from trauma. The library where their children would study and dream. All of it built from the ashes of her destroyed marriage, funded by the success that had emerged from her refusal to remain a victim. Mama Amara, Akosua tugged on her dress, "Are you happy?" Amara looked down at this child who had unknowingly catalyzed the greatest transformation of her life. 5 years ago, Akosua's existence had represented everything Amara couldn't have. Today, she represented everything Amara had gained through choosing love over bitterness. "I'm more than happy, sweetheart. I'm complete." As the sun set over Kumasi, painting the sky in the same brilliant oranges and purples that had marked the end of Amara's old life in Accra, she received a text from an unknown number. "Sister, I watched your speech online. I am proud of the woman you've become and ashamed of the woman I was. When I'm ready to be worthy of your forgiveness, I hope you give me the chance to earn it. Your sister, ASI." Amara read the message twice, then looked up at the center that bore her name, a monument to the power of choosing construction over destruction, forgiveness over revenge, love over hate. She typed back simply, "When you're ready, I'll be here. Your sister, always."